long before the first dinosaur took its breath, long before birds filled the skies, long before the rise of mammals. Earth came closer to death than at any other moment in its 4.5 billion-year history, a catastrophe so immense, so relentless, that it erased nearly all life on the planet. Entire forests vanished. The oceans became silent. Ancient predators that had ruled the seas for millions of years disappeared forever. More than 96% of marine species, around 70% of life on land, gone. This wasn't the asteroid that ended the dinosaurs. This happened over 250 million years earlier. No giant impact from space. No single day of destruction. Instead, the Earth turned against itself. For hundreds of thousands of years, the planet became a factory of fire. Volcanoes darkened the skies. Poisonous gases filled the atmosphere. The oceans slowly suffocated. Every sunrise revealed a world that was becoming less alive than the day before. Scientists call it the Great Dying, the greatest mass extinction our planet has ever known. This is the day Earth almost died. To understand how Earth nearly died, we first have to travel back to a world almost impossible to recognize. 252 million years ago, there were no flowering plants, no birds, no dinosaurs, no humans. The continents we know today did not exist. Instead, almost all of Earth's land had collided into one enormous supercontinent, Pangaea, stretching from pole to pole. It was surrounded by a single global ocean, Pangaea. The interior of this colossal landmass was harsh. Summer temperatures soared beyond 50 degrees Celsius. Rain rarely reached the vast inland deserts. Dust storms could rage for weeks. But around its rivers, coastlines, wetlands, and shallow seas, life flourished. Gigantic insects buzzed through ancient forests. Strange reptile-like creatures wandered across fern-covered plains. Massive amphibians hunted along swampy shores. And beneath the waves, an entirely different kingdom ruled the planet. Reefs stretched for thousands of kilometers. Armored fish cruised warm tropical seas. Sharks hunted silently through crystal-clear waters. Corals built underwater cities that had survived for millions of years. The Earth seemed stable, balanced, alive. Yet beneath this beautiful world, far below the crust, a force unlike anything in human history was beginning to awaken. It would not strike in a single day. It would poison the planet, one eruption at a time. From the surface, the Earth appeared peaceful. Forests stretched toward the horizon. Ancient rivers carved their way across the endless plains. Life continued as it had for millions of years. But nearly 100 kilometers below the surface, the planet was changing. Deep inside the Earth's mantle, an immense plume of superheated rock had begun its slow ascent. Unlike an ordinary volcano, this wasn't a single mountain preparing to erupt. It was an entire region of the Earth's crust, slowly being torn apart from below. The pressure continued to build. Century after century, millennium after millennium, the molten rock pushed upward, searching for a way out. No creature walking the Earth had any idea that beneath their feet, a geological disaster was preparing to rewrite the history of life itself. Then, the Earth cracked. Across what is now northern Siberia, gigantic fissures ripped open the crust, not for days, not for years, but for hundreds of thousands of years. Instead of exploding from a single volcanic cone, lava erupted through enormous fractures stretching across the landscape. Walls of molten rock burst in the ground like glowing rivers. Entire valleys disappeared beneath oceans of lava. Every eruption buried forests, rivers, and ecosystems beneath fresh layers of molten basalt. By the time the eruptions finally slowed, more than 7 million square kilometers had been covered in volcanic rock, an area nearly the size of Australia. Today, scientists call this volcanic province the Siberian Traps, one of the largest volcanic events our planet has ever witnessed. The lava alone wasn't Earth's greatest enemy. Every eruption pumped unimaginable amounts of carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, methane, and other toxic gases into the atmosphere. Day after day, year after year, century after century, the sky grew darker. Sunlight struggled to reach the surface. Acid rain fell across the forests. Temperatures climbed higher than many species could survive. The balance that had protected life for millions of years was beginning to collapse. The extinction had not yet reached its peak, but the countdown had begun. At first, the catastrophe seemed to belong to the land. Volcanoes erupted, ash darkened the skies, rivers of lava buried forests. But Earth's greatest tragedy was unfolding somewhere else. In the oceans, the seas had always been the cradle of life. For hundreds of millions of years, they had sheltered countless species. Coral reefs flourished. Armored fish patrolled warm tropical waters. Ancient sharks hunted in the open sea. Countless microscopic organisms produced much of the oxygen that filled the atmosphere. Then, everything began to change. The enormous quantities of carbon dioxide released by the Siberian Traps dissolved into seawater. The oceans became warmer, more acidic, and far less capable of supporting life. Warm water holds less oxygen. As temperatures continued to rise, oxygen levels plunged. Slowly, the oceans began to suffocate. The change did not happen overnight. It unfolded over thousands of years. Reefs that stood for millions of years began to crumble. Schools of fish vanished. Predators searched for prey that no longer existed. On the seafloor, entire ecosystems collapsed. Animals too slow to escape simply suffocated. Many species never had the chance to evolve a defense. The food chain broke apart. One extinction triggered another, and another, until the oceans became vast underwater deserts. The silence was almost complete. The greatest marine extinction in Earth's history was underway. As oxygen disappeared, another invisible killer emerged. Deep beneath the surface, anaerobic bacteria began to thrive. Unlike most life, these microorganisms did not need oxygen. Instead, they released hydrogen sulfide gas, a poison deadly to nearly every complex organism on Earth. In some regions, the toxic gas rose from the oceans into the atmosphere. Marine life died first, then the poison reached the coasts. Scientists believe these deadly emissions may have devastated plants, insects, and animals living on land. The oceans were no longer Earth's greatest source of life. They had become a factory of death. The oceans had fallen silent. Now the land followed. Forests that stood for millions of years began to disappear. Towering trees collapsed beneath relentless heat. Acid rain poisoned the soil. Wildfires swept across entire continents. Rivers dried. Wetlands vanished. Every ecosystem that had once supported life was unraveling. The insects disappeared first. Without them, countless food chains collapsed. The giant dragonflies that once ruled the skies vanished forever. Ancient forests became graveyards of blackened trunks. The planet was no longer losing species. It was losing entire worlds. Every extinction leaves behind survivors, but survival came at an unimaginable cost. Across the dying world, only a handful of species remained. Small reptilian animals hid inside burrows to escape the scorching heat. Others survived beside the last shrinking rivers. Many fed on the dead. Because little else remained, predators became scavengers. Scavengers became desperate. Even the strongest creatures struggled to find enough food. For millions of years, evolution had rewarded size and power. Now it favored endurance. Those that could survive extreme heat, starvation, and poisoned air inherited the future. The numbers are almost impossible to comprehend. Around 96% of all marine species gone. Nearly 70% of land vertebrates extinct. Entire families of plants, insects, amphibians, and reptiles disappeared forever. Scientists estimate that more than 9 out of every 10 living species vanished. Never before, and never since, has life on Earth come so close to complete collapse. If the extinction had continued much longer, complex life itself may never have recovered. For a brief moment in geological history, Earth became a planet fighting for its own survival. The Great Dying had reached its terrible climax. When the fires finally began to fade, Earth did not suddenly become green again. The silence remained. The forests were gone. The oceans were nearly empty. Across the continents, the wind blew over endless fields of volcanic rock. Dead riverbeds, and mountains of ash. The rulers of the ancient world had vanished. Entire branches of evolution had been erased. There were no thriving ecosystems, no great predators dominating the land, no vast coral reefs beneath the sea. For millions of years, Earth was a wounded planet. Recovery would not take centuries, or even thousands of years. It would take millions. Nature would have to begin again. Life is astonishingly resilient. Even after the greatest catastrophe in Earth's history, it refused to disappear. Tiny bacteria continued to thrive. Hardy fungi spread across the dead forests. The first mosses and primitive plants slowly reclaimed the scorched ground. Insects returned. Small reptiles emerged from their shelters. Every generation carried new adaptations. Every surviving species became the foundation for a new world. Evolution accelerated. Empty ecosystems created opportunities that had never existed before. The extinction had destroyed almost everything, but it had also reset the rules of life. As millions of years passed, the survivors diversified. New forests covered the continents. Fresh coral reefs appeared beneath the seas. Rivers once again teemed with life. But something else was quietly happening. A small group of reptiles, once overshadowed by larger animals, began to spread across a recovering Earth. They were fast, adaptable, efficient. At first, few would have noticed them. Yet these survivors would eventually become the dominant animals on the planet. They were the ancestors of the dinosaurs. Without the great dying, the Age of Dinosaurs might never have happened. The Earth had survived, but it would never be the same again. The Permian Mass Extinction didn't simply erase life. It changed the direction of evolution forever. The empty ecosystems left behind became laboratories of natural selection. Species evolved faster than before. New predators appeared. New forests spread across the continents. The oceans slowly regained their rhythm. Every mountain, every coastline, every rainforest that exists today carries the legacy of those survivors. Without the great dying, the modern world would look unimaginably different. Only a few million years after the extinction, a new dynasty began to rise. The first true dinosaurs appeared. At first, they were small, quick, and easily overlooked. But over tens of millions of years, they diversified into giants, towering herbivores, fearsome predators. Flying reptiles ruled the skies. Marine reptiles dominated the oceans. For the next 165 million years, the descendants of the Permian survivors would reign over Earth. Ironically, their existence was made possible because another world had first been destroyed. Hidden among the shadows of the dinosaurs lived tiny, warm-blooded creatures, early mammals. For millions of years, they remained small, waiting, surviving. Then, 66 million years ago, another extinction changed everything. The asteroid that ended the dinosaurs opened the door for mammals to inherit the Earth. Eventually, primates evolved, then early humans, then civilizations. Every city, every invention, every person alive today exists because life refused to surrender after the great dying. The story of humanity began with survivors. The Permian Mass Extinction happened over 252 million years ago, yet its warning still echoes today. Scientists continue to study the ancient rocks, searching for clues hidden within layers of volcanic ash, fossils, and chemical signatures left behind by a dying world. Those rocks tell a story of climate change, runaway greenhouse gases, ocean acidification, mass extinction, and the astonishing resilience of life. Earth recovered, but recovery required millions of years. Civilization would never have survived such a collapse. Today, our planet faces challenges that remind us how delicate the balance of life truly is. The Great Dying is more than ancient history. It is a reminder that even a world as resilient as Earth can be pushed to the edge, and that the future of life has always depended on the choices made in the present. Long before dinosaurs, long before mammals, long before humanity, Earth came closer to death than at any other moment in its history. From unimaginable destruction came extraordinary renewal. every forest, every ocean, every animal, every breath we take is part of a story that almost ended before it truly began. This was the day Earth almost died, and the miracle is that life found a way. Kindly subscribe now and turn on notifications because our next documentary will thrill you.